It was a quiet, stormy evening, the kind of night where the rain hits the windows like tiny drums and thunder rolls lazily in the distance. I was sitting in my living room, lost in the pages of an old book, when I heard it. A soft knock at the door. At first, I thought I imagined it. It was late and the rain was heavy, so who would be out there? But there it was again, this time unmistakable. I opened the door, expecting a neighbor or maybe even a stray animal. But there was no one. Nothing but the cold wind rushing past me and an envelope lying on the doormat. The envelope felt strange in my hands. The paper was thick, like parchment, and the handwriting was beautiful, elegant, like something out of a history book. Inside was a single note. "Meet me at Crescent Hollow at midnight." That was it. No name, no explanation. Just those words and a small heart drawn at the bottom. I should have ignored it, tossed it in the trash and gone back to my book. But I didn't. Something about that note pulled at me, like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. Against every ounce of common sense, I grabbed my coat and flashlight. I had to know who sent it. The walk to Crescent Hollow was longer than I remembered. The path twisted through the woods, narrow and overgrown. My flashlight flickered as the shadows seemed to dance just out of reach. The air was thick, damp, and colder than it should have been for late spring. With every step, the sounds of the forest grew quieter, like even the animals were holding their breath. For a moment, I thought about turning back, but something about that note wouldn't let me. When I finally reached Crescent Hollow, it felt like stepping into another world. The clearing was bathed in moonlight, brighter than I'd ever seen. At the center stood an old gazebo, draped in ivy and weathered by time. It looked abandoned, forgotten, except for the rose lying on the bench inside. The rose was flawless, like it had been plucked just moments ago. Next to it was another note, written in the same beautiful handwriting. "I've been waiting for you. Look closer at the shadows. Love sometimes hides where you least expect it." I read the note twice, trying to make sense of it when I felt it, that prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like I wasn't alone. And then I saw him. He stepped out from the shadows of the gazebo, tall and composed, with a presence that felt both calming and unnerving. His eyes, storm grey and piercing, locked onto mine, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. "I was worried you wouldn't come," he said, his voice smooth and low, like a melody I'd heard before but couldn't place. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you bring me here?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved closer, his footsteps silent against the damp ground. "My name is Evan," he said finally. "I brought you here because I needed to see you, to warn you." "Warn me? About what?" Evan hesitated, his eyes flickering to the forest around us. "You're being watched. There's something here, in these woods, that's been waiting for you." The air seemed to shift as he spoke, growing colder. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was nothing there. "What's waiting for me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Evan sighed, like the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. "The moonlit bride," he said. "She's watching us now." I wanted to laugh, to tell him this all sounded ridiculous, but the look in his eyes stopped me. "Who's the moonlit bride?" I asked. He stepped closer, his expression grave. "She was a bride, long ago, betrayed on her wedding night. Her fiancé left her standing at the altar, and she fled into these woods, heartbroken and angry. She never left." I shivered, not from the cold, but from the way his words settled in my chest. "Now, he continued. She curses anyone who dares to love under the moonlight. She takes them, and once she does, they're gone forever. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Why are you telling me this? Why me? Evan's gaze softened, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. Because I've seen what she can do, and because I care about you. Before I could respond, the air turned ice cold. The shadows around us seemed to stretch, creeping closer. I felt it before I saw her, the presence, heavy and suffocating. And then she appeared. She was beautiful in a terrible way. Her dress was torn, her veil flowing like smoke around her. Her eyes glowed faintly behind the fabric, locked onto me with a hatred I couldn't understand. You dare to love under my moonlight, she whispered, her voice sharp as broken glass. Evan stepped in front of me, his arms outstretched. Leave her alone. She has nothing to do with this. The bride's gaze shifted to him, and she let out a low, hollow laugh. You think you can protect her? Just like you protected the last one? Evan's body tensed, and I realized this wasn't the first time he'd faced her. The bride lunged toward us, and Evan pushed me aside, taking the brunt of her attack. The gazebo shook as shadows swirled around us, lashing out like living things. I couldn't just stand there. You've suffered enough, I shouted at her. But love isn't something you can take. It's something you give, and I won't let you take him from me. The bride paused, her form flickering like a dying flame. For a moment, I thought she might strike again. But then, she screamed, a sound so loud and hollow it felt like it would split the earth. And then, she was gone. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, I turned to Evan, relief flooding through me. But he was fading, his form growing lighter, like he was made of smoke. No, I said, reaching for him. Please don't go. Evan smiled, his eyes full of gratitude. You saved me, Lila. You broke the curse, but I don't belong here anymore. Tears filled my eyes as I tried to hold on to him, but my hands passed right through. You gave me peace, he said softly, and for that, I'll always be with you. And just like that, he was gone. All that was left was a single rose, lying on the bench where he'd stood. Do like and subscribe this channel if you love your puppy.